I believe that speed is king in almost anything, and especially in software development. I'd like to give a story related to Skill Builder that illustrates how true this is. A few months ago, when I was in talks to get hired as director of software development in a tech company, a job I later got, I was speaking with the main engineer that the company owner works with. I was trying and failing to explain to him that because I could do so many different roles in the software development process at a high level, that the value and therefore the pay should be higher. His response was that since I can only do one role at a time and I can't do them all at the same time, that he didn't see how it made sense to pay me more. So I want to tie this into Skill Builder, the learning platform I'm creating, as an interesting conversation happened with one of the content creators. He's a smart guy and an MBA professor with experience in project management in terms of when it comes to software development. So I'll explain the context. My site is geared around teaching a skill quickly and efficiently to the person learning. And I was planning on doing it a certain way initially. And then as I was designing the system, after all my years of martial arts training, I realized that there's a more efficient way of doing it that will teach the concept even better and faster and drill it into the mind of the person who's learning. This new way is much more complex to design and build, and if you saw my previous video, I mentioned that this platform requires some of the most precise engineering already that I've had to do in more than 25 software projects. This one element brought it to a whole other level. It's so complex to the point that when I think back to the beginning of my career as a business analyst, and I remember all the detailed meetings that included the product team for something a lot less complicated, and comparing it with this, that it would have taken no less than 30 to 40 long meetings going back and forth with discussion going into the details at the very least, just in order to make headway. And that would be on top of each person on their own working out the details further, the specifics afterwards. And anyone who's been through this kind of process really knows that the devil's in the details. This one aspect includes layers upon layers upon layers and upon layers of complexity with elements of gamification mixed into the picture. Now, when I describe this change, most people will not understand how much more complicated it is, which is normal. But when describing to this MBA professor, through his background in software project management, he realized that how much more complex it was, or he had an idea that it was a lot more complex. And he asked if I'm sure that it's worth the time to do now. And I told him that in fact, it's so much more complex that it would normally take an extra few months to implement, and it only made sense for me to do now because I can get through it in about a week. Otherwise, I would push it to a future release. So bringing this back, what's the hourly rate value of that? Because if you take a senior business analyst that spends, let's say, a day gathering business requirements for a feature, and in the same time span, I've gathered the business requirements, created specs, created database and programming logic, implemented and tested it, how do you gauge the hourly value or the hourly rate of that? It's a hard thing to answer, and perhaps one reason why I've never really fit into corporate culture too well, but I can tell you that when building a tech business, the value of that is priceless. Because what it means is that for the people using Skill Builder, two main things. One, when you bring up an idea for a feature that would be helpful for you, it doesn't need to go through rounds of discussions with multiple decision makers to happen. And two, that in many cases, you won't need to wait months for fixes or for new features. All that said, I'm looking forward to getting out the first version. It looks like next week that where the learner can actually go through it and start learning. And just stay tuned because there's a lot more excitement to come. Thanks.